All right. Well, I'm happy to do another one of these. We're talking with Larry Chapin of H.E. Williams, and we're going to talk about BIOS. Williams recently announced that they are a BIOS partner, and I think it's important to understand, what BIOS is and how it's going to integrate into the product line. So, Larry, thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely, JP. Thanks to you for all the content and everything you're putting up, and also SDA as well. You guys are doing a great job right now. So thanks for having me.
We're doing our best. So I was excited to see the BIOS partnership. I think BIOS is one of those technologies that if you're in the lighting world, you've heard about it. It sort of floats in and out. You hear like well building and BIOS and circadian rhythm and all that. But you want to give us a high level sort of real quick introduction to what BIOS is and how it works with in terms of lighting and what's meant to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a quick presentation I can toss up that answers a couple of those if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Share my screen up here real quick with you. And find this one. Let's go for this one. And watch this guy. All right, is that coming up for you?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. So real quick high-level overview, 6-7 slides about really who is BIOS. So BIOS is a NASA spinoff company. Their technology was really seeded in development for the International Space Station. So the astronauts that are on the ISS, their light dark cycle is every 90 minutes. So it's like the sun comes up and goes down every 90 minutes. So circadian entrainment is a big deal, enabling those guys to formulate some sort of an internal clock, circadian clock, to be able to get quality sleep, because up there on the ISS, visual acuity, alertness and awareness and productivity are pretty big things that they pay attention to. So they're a NASA spinoff company. They develop innovative lighting solutions that primarily focus on health and well-being. So BIOS has a lighting for human side, and they have a horticultural side. So Williams obviously participates in the human side. And their technology that they have, which is at the LED chip level, we'll talk about that here in just a second, but importantly, it satisfies circadian lighting design criteria for feature 54 and well building standard 1 and feature L3 and well building standard version 2. So that's a big deal for the design specification community.
Yeah, for sure.
So real high up level overview of BIOS and what they do. This is a representation of spectral distribution for daylight. So you go outside, this is generally what you're going to have here. And these are all the different areas physiologically that have an impact on our sight. So this is the spectral distribution of LEDs in just a static or tunable white module. So if you look over here on the third from the left, the non-visual response, this is really where BIOS has put their focus at. So this is going to be the space where you have non-visual photoreceptors for, well, they're called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs for short. Short is better. But we've got rods and cones, and those pick up on visual stimulus. So those pick up on light. Then the non-visual responses in those IPRGCs. Those IPRGCs communicate then to our brains and tell us when to produce or suppress melanopsin. And that melanopsin is then what at night tells us to get tired, sleepy, go to sleep, and then actually have a quality sleep. So you wake up feeling more rested, more productive, more alert throughout the day. So this is the spectral distribution of BIOS. So you can see they've got that area emphasized. So there is, it's called sky blue is the LED trademark name. And that's a peak at 490 nanometers in the visible light spectrum. So that's why you're seeing that increase right there, which is a difference to just the standard static LEDs. So they're really entraining the production of melanopsin during the day. So that's really it's as simple as that.
Yeah, so I want to just give people a sort of sense for what this technology is, what the thought is here on architectural lighting. The thought here, I think, with BIOS is that we had a whole presentation last week with talking about light and how it relates to the sort of biologically to humans. And if you caught that webinar, that AIA presentation, then you're caught up on this. But if you didn't, the real thought here is that the non-visual response is what kind of tells us to wake up, and it's what keeps us alert during the day. And BIOS specializes in doing that without fundamentally altering what the light looks like coming out of the fixture. There is a slight shift when you turn this BIOS range of light on, but essentially, if you spec through 3500 Kelvin or 3000 Kelvin, it's not going to feel essentially different when this BIOS pattern of part of the spectrum is enabled. So talk to me a little bit, Larry, about understanding what the purpose of this technology is, which is to help alertness, help visual acuity, help people feel more awake and more functional during the day. Why did Williams decide that this was an important partnership and going forward?
Yeah, great question. So for us, we're very responsive to the voice of the customer. And for us, that's a lot of different customers, contractors, distributors, designers, architects, engineers, representatives. So it's a broad swath of different customers that we listen to. And in the design specification community, BIOS has done a fantastic job of having a strong presence, engaging that community, going out and giving presentations, and then also participating in industry events. So back when we were doing industry events and trade shows, these guys were at every one of them for like the last 2 years that I had gone to it. They were there. And so I had an opportunity to, kind of go up and knock on the door. This is right around the time when human-centric lighting was kind of entering the lexicon for lighting in general. So talking to them about what their technology was and how it's being deployed, and then also what their kind of go-to-market strategy was. So they are, effectively, they've developed the technology, but they are providing it in sort of an OEM capacity through partnerships that they've developed. And for us, we were getting a lot of feedback from lighting designers and also from reps that had participated in an event, an educational event where BIOS had come up, or directly engaged with BIOS. Or their customer got a hold of them and said, hey, with this new well building standard, version 1, the circadian lighting requirement, are you guys set up to be able to satisfy that? Do you have any partners that can do that? So that really drove them towards a very select few people that have technology for that. There's other ways to go about that. You can load up at 6500 Kelvin and increase the overall brightness to get there. But ultimately, we're not specking out 6500K lights. So. Yeah. So these guys had the ability to do that 3500 Kelvin. And after getting enough of those, we really started to engage in conversation with BIOS about what that partnership would look like and what the go-to-market strategy was and how both of our organizations could benefit from it. So that's how that came to be.
Yeah, so I think that's really important because I think that a lot of folks who've heard about circadian lighting or heard about BIOS or any of this stuff kind of jump on it because it's the next thing. It's like when we talked about LEED and energy efficiency, it was like all of a sudden every lighting manufacturer is the most efficient lighting manufacturer. And now we're talking about well building and circadian lighting and wellness and health. And it felt like a lot of manufacturers felt like they needed to say something about it. So there was tunable white and there was this and there, without any real discussion or science behind it. So hearing that you guys went the other way and got customer reaction, got feedback from the folks that are actually specifying and installing lighting and moving in and working in the built environment, tells me that it's not about just jumping on the bandwagon. It's about getting, this is where the movement is going. This is where the next phase of designing effective light for workspaces and healthcare spaces and places like that.
Yeah, this was 100% in response to our customers coming to us and saying, hey, we need to solve for X. And X in this case was human-centric lighting. So Williams also has a portfolio of just static LED products, but also tunable white, warm dimming, tunable color. But those are going to be more for a psychological effect, and BIOS is going to be more for the actual physiological effect.
That's right. So BIOS is now, so you're now BIOS partners. Can you talk a little bit about, I took a quick look at the website and there was just a breadth of products that you guys are able to include BIOS in. Can you give us sort of an overview of what those product types are and how you envision this being used?
Yeah, let me click ahead here a couple of slides. We can come back to that guy. So
Yeah.
we've got 25 right now. You know, Williams' portfolio is huge. We serve a lot of different markets. We've got a lot of different product types. So we wanted to really choose based off of a lot of the feedback that we were hearing what product types were going to be used out in the field. So a lot of architectural products mainly. So continuous linear, our MX2 2-inch and our MX4 4-inch continuous linear products are going to be available with BIOS. Recessed architectural products like our AT1, 2, and 3, which is a little bit more of an architectural design. Also our PT is available. And then especially in healthcare environments where this may get a little bit more traction early on, as opposed to maybe a K through 12 education space. So healthcare, we've got MD4 patient room lights, AMD patient room lights, but we've also got MCTs for clean rooms. So clean room laboratory spaces are often occupied on odd shift hours, or they might be a 24-hour facility. So having the ability to do this entrainment in those spaces is a big deal. We've also got our downlight line. So 4-inch and 6-inch round and square products for downlights, architectural downlights are available. Suspended linear products like our SDI5, a lot of different distribution options for those. And then surprisingly, we actually got a lot of requests for retrofit products as well. So we've made available our PTR, which is a recessed 2x2, 1x4, 2x4 retrofit product. So a nice little package initially of about 25 products that are BIOS illuminated. And of course, we have the ability to turn projects pretty quickly for customization. So if there's a specification that has some of these products on it, but it also has some other Williams that maybe aren't already listed with BIOS on the spec sheet, we can accommodate those requests pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I think this is another example, similar to how you guys rolled out PoE, where it's not a one-off, right? It's not one or two products. Let's kick the tires on this. We can do this in a wide variety of fixtures. It's a platform for you guys. So that to me is, if you're thinking about designing, whether we're talking about healthcare spaces, office space, or educational environments where BIOS might be something that ownership or the stakeholders involved really want to invest, it sounds to me like Williams has got the sort of widest breadth of products that can do that in one sort of consistent specification. I could be wrong about that, but that's the sense I get from this.
Yeah, we went when we set out to do it. We don't like to go off half-cocked. So we made a decision. You know, if we're going to become a partner, we're going to invest in the partnership. And as BIOS has on the other side of this too, in terms of their support, which is the whole other side of this too, is the support mechanisms that are in place to help aid with specification and design for these well building standards. So that's a valuable resource that BIOS has lent us to be able to pass through to our customers. And then engagement too for educational purposes. But yeah, we set out to be able to provide a pretty comprehensive solution, as we do with our portfolio in general. Such is the case also too then with the BIOS illuminated products.
So let's talk a little bit about BIOS, and let's talk a little bit about how you control this, right? So I think previously, one of the things that I had heard that was sort of confusing or controversial about BIOS was, what if I don't want this range of blue light on all day, right? What if I'm working in a hospital and we don't know the best practices as far as keeping hallway illumination, for instance. Does it want to be engaging the circadian rhythm, or will it harm people if it's on all day? But BIOS has addressed that, as I understand it. And so let's talk a little bit about how that gets addressed in the control world.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely an important part of something like this too, is the controls package that goes along with it. So BIOS, when they launched, they just had a static LED module. So you got that sky blue 490 peak in those non-visual receptor areas, but it was always on. And so pretty quickly, they had to move to adapt that technology to be able to pull that out. So if you're in a 24-hour use facility, you need the ability to have that on at the appropriate time to control that distribution. if you're in a space like again, an office space, not very apropos right now, but if you're in an office and you're working, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you could have the static BIOS modules in there, turn the lights on in the morning, they go off in the evening, no issues. But if you're going to have multiple shifts or people coming and going 24 hours a day, then you do want to be able to have the ability to take that out. So BIOS, I loved, absolutely loved the way that they did this, which was to keep it just utterly simple. So let me flip back, I think, here, one slide, if I can. All right, so they came up with a product called their biodimming module. So biodimming allows them to take out that 490 nanometer peak and bring that down. And the way they do that is through a simple 0 to 10 protocol. So they've got a little control module that goes into the fixture that goes in between the driver and the LEDs. The driver, which is great, it's not a proprietary driver we can use, which is really important to Williams with all the different product types we have. We can use an array of different drivers. It's a 0 to 10 protocol. When you take out, if you see down here on the left-hand side of this slide, once you take out about the first 40 to 50% of that light, you're not actually changing the illumination level. So the lumens are going to be staying the same. You're just actually taking out that 490 nanometer peak. So you notice a very tiny, tiny variation in the color temperature, pretty insignificant. I think you're drifting maybe 500 Kelvin, which is fairly insignificant when you're taking that out. So taking it down 40, 50% pulls out the sky blue. And then if you take it down the rest of the way, then you're going to actually start doing the dimming on those LEDs. So you can think of it, first half pulls out the blue, second half is going to actually dim that fixture down. So interesting protocol that they've come up with.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize it worked like that. I thought it was 2 0 to 10 volt inputs, one doing the BIOS portion and one doing the bright intensity, but it's not. It's actually, it's the first 50% of the dimming range. That's really interesting.
You could actually control this with one of those old little rotary dimmers if you wanted to.
What's the, do you know, I realize this is more their thing than yours, but do you know why what the science or the thought process is behind controlling it that way, or is it just simplicity?
I think simplicity. They have done a fantastic job also of using voice of customer to drive their development for their products, and controls. Going forward, controls are going to be an exceptionally important part of the packages, and they have been for some time. But especially for things like this, so for them it was, how do you come up with the most ubiquitous, simple controls interface? Because there's control systems out there that you need to have somebody who's competent in, messing with those on site, or that there's only certain people that have access to it. How do you make this as accessible as possible? And I think going with a 0 to 10 protocol and being able to do everything from the same source was their solution for that.
Yeah. So, we're showing this with a very simple slide dimmer on the wall, but if you're employing any kind of time code based dimming system, whether we're talking about a Douglas system or a Leviton system or a PoE down the road or whatever else you might be working with, this can happen automatically based on your programming of the control system. So if you want to make sure that you're engaging automatically in removing the BIOS portion of this, it's as simple as sending a dimming command at whatever 4 or 5, 6 o'clock, whatever is determined to be the right time. You can get really fancy and tie it to the astronomical clock. And then so as the sun starts to set, this starts to fade. But that's up to you and how fancy you want to get, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of this is, it's at its core, it's a very basic, simple protocol. But when you piggyback this with other systems that can manipulate 0 to 10 sources, then you could program this up as simple or as complex as you want to, depending on, what your use case is. So the design narrative for the actual project that is getting worked on this accommodates that very, very nicely.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool about that is the science behind this and best practices behind this are still sort of being developed, right? Like there are still some debate about how long the peak of 490 nanometer should be employed during the day. There's some debate about what like if you're a night shift nurse, is it better for this to be on or off? There's a lot of those sort of open questions.
Yeah.
Introducing the dimming portion of this allows facilities to adapt. So when the best science comes out, when best practices are established over time, you're not locked into one particular mode of operation, which I think is really
they've really future-proofed that solution too for that purpose. And they did pick up a few different awards. I got those listed up top for the, it's so simple, but it is future-proof, and it's a really great system to be able to piggyback with a lot of different control systems.
That's awesome. So to wrap up, Larry, what's the best way if a customer is interested in jumping on this? If one of my specifiers says, hey, I'm doing an office that's well building and I want to start employing this, what's is all this listed on the website today, or is that coming? Should we reach out to Williams directly and sort of get some information that way? What's the best methodology?
Yeah, it's so on the website. Let me take you there real quick if I could, just to show
sure.
you. So on the website, if you're on the home page, go over here to products. We've got a tab for BIOS. You can click on that guy, scroll down, and see all the different products that are available with it.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the spec sheets, we'll have an illuminated by BIOS logo on there to let you know that that is specifiable as a product with BIOS in it. Now, our RSMs are all getting up to speed on this to be able to give an overview of it and then direct you guys to the people who can answer the questions. So we've kind of got a tiered approach. So RSMs are going to be able to engage and speak about this intelligently. Then we're going to have an inside layer, which will consist of myself, some of our applications and controls teams. And then the next layer of that is really going to be down to this partnership that we have, leveraging that with BIOS. And I mean, those guys are fantastic. If there's a question, they can hop on the phone, they can get a presentation going, a webinar. Not a whole lot of in-person visits, I don't think, going on this year, but they've done a great job embracing the change as well. So they're set up, and I think most of them work remotely anyway. So they're a great team, and there's a lot of support there for that. So in terms of just getting a hold of us, it'd be like anything else. For a product question, send it in, and we'll get you guys taken care of.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, Larry, thank you for doing this. We will. This is part of the SDA library. It'll be part of the stuff that we share with our specifiers. But I think it's an important early conversation into how we can integrate this, and I'm excited to see you guys embracing it.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, JP. Thanks again for everything you're doing, man.